Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so get this straight. Now even some Democrats agree that the timing here is clear election meddling, election interference. It's an odd phenomenon, but every now and then I guess a Democrat has the ability to be somewhat honest. It's crazy to think. It's crazy to imagine, but I guess it happens sometimes. You won't believe this, but Nancy Pelosi's little minion just essentially admitted that the court date chosen by federal judge Chutkan in the January 6 case in DC is clearly inappropriate, and he essentially makes the argument that it's election interference, and that these legal cases should get out of the way of democracy. I never thought I'd hear it, but it's true, an odd moment of intellectual consistency. I guess we're not conspiracy theorists after all. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, look at this headline from Mediaite. Mediaite, by the way, is the far leftist publication of choice, so you know the readers of this article must be seething with rage. Democrat congressman expresses concern over Trump trial date. Election should be a fair fight. Representative Ro Khanna told conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt that the various legal proceedings against Donald Trump shouldn't compromise Trump's ability to campaign in 2024 on Tuesday. Hewitt set the table for the conversation by noting that U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan set the start date for one of Trump's upcoming trials on the day before the Republican presidential primary Super Tuesday, and asking Khanna to comment on the decision. After the congressman pointed out that the date could still be moved, Hewitt called the decision a terrible insult to our idea, our fundamental commitment to fair proceedings, and wondered aloud if it struck Khanna the same way. He responded by acknowledging the importance of the trial's timing in this instance. Well, I'm not sure that's going to be the actual date at the end of the day. There's appeals, there's an ability to move it. I mean, let's see what happens, but I'm a member of Congress. It's not for me to make decisions where the trial dates are going to happen. My instinct on all of this is that they're going to have trials in the middle of something that's going on to compromise a candidate's ability who has real traction to have a fair fight. I just don't see that happening in our country. I'm just amazed that we have 4 prosecutors who are Democrats running 4 cases in 4 different jurisdictions, marveled Hewitt. I guess Jack Smith is one prosecutor doing 2 cases, and that Blue America doesn't seem to understand that Red America thinks it's a complete setup job. Do you understand my concerns and how this looks? Khanna then responded, well look, I talked to obviously Republican colleagues and they feel that the timing of it is one where the charges are too far. I believe that you have to follow the law and some of the conduct is very, very, very serious. And you can't just say, okay, because someone was president or someone is a candidate, that they are above the law. Everyone is under the law, and that these allegations, the evidence need to be pursued. But what we're discussing is the timing, and I do think we need to make sure that in the timing, if Trump does emerge as the Republican nominee, that it does not compromise the ability to have a robust campaign schedule, and I imagine that the courts will take that into consideration if he is the nominee. You know, he may not be the nominee. I mean, that still has to be determined. So here we have a Democrat essentially admitting that he's concerned that these legal proceedings are going to affect Donald Trump's ability to campaign, and he claims that there should be a fair fight. He's essentially admitting the quiet part out loud, that these Democrat prosecutions are getting in the way of a fair democratic process. There's one part of his statement which I found completely ridiculous as well. He claimed that his instinct on all of this is that they're not going to have trials in the middle of something that's going to compromise a candidate's ability who has real traction to have a fair fight. I just don't see that happening in this country. What do you mean you don't see that happening in this country? It's literally happening. I mean, there's cognitive dissonance, and then there's whatever the hell this is. I don't see them engaging in this kind of behavior during a time that would compromise a candidate's ability to participate in the democratic process, he says after they've indicted Donald Trump 4 times, basically in the midst of an election season, over nonsense, bogus charges. You know, he's saying the right thing to a certain extent. He's having, I guess, a moment of clarity or a moment of honesty, but there is still such a heightened level of ignorance, of dishonesty, of deceptiveness, and of deep, deep partisanship. This guy basically says all the quiet parts out loud, either purposely or accidentally. The lunatic Democrats never fail to deliver when it comes to hypocrisy. It is clear election interference, and it is clearly a 2-tiered double standard of justice. Ro Khanna essentially admits it, and now even CNN's top legal analyst, Elie Honig, basically admits the same thing. Byron York writes on Twitter, CNN legal analysts agree that given the huge volume of evidence to be examined, Judge Chutkan's March 4th, 2024 trial date is cutting it pretty close to the line with respect to Donald Trump's constitutional right to fully prepare. Caroline Polisi says, well, I am a criminal defense attorney, so I tend to align myself more with that side of things. That being said, 2026 was a bit of a reach. That's what we're arguing for. As a defense attorney, you can't just really take the government's word for it. There are 12 million documents here to look through. The government noted, there are duplicative documents in that dump that he's, has many of them in his possession already. However, you can't just go on to that. You are going to want to look through those documents to make sure there's nothing in there that's a surprise. There are sophisticated ways to sift through these documents' word searchability. That being said, March 4th, it's coming up. A lot of federal trials would give you more time on that. So I do think it's going to be an issue. Likely it's not going to be a winner on appeal, but it's definitely going to be, up for debate. Then Elie Honig, CNN senior legal analyst, says, I agree, judges have a very wide discretion when it comes to setting trial dates, and I agree that this will be an issue Donald Trump will appeal eventually, but it's cutting it really close here to make Donald Trump, in a case with 12 million pages of documents, go to trial in 7 months. Some of the rationales that the DOJ offered up that the judge agreed with, I think, don't cut it. For example, one of the things that the DOJ argued, and the judge agreed with, is, well, he's sort of known that this was a possibility for a year or so. Going back to the January 6th trials, that's not the way it works in our system. You are not on notice as a criminal defendant until an indictment drops. That's the purpose of an indictment. You can't just say, well, you should have known that there was something floating out there in the ether. That doesn't cut it. I also agree with Caroline. One of the big rationales has been, well, we the prosecutors, we give you this handy guide for the most important documents. That's nice. That's a sweet courtesy. But guess what? It's up to the defense lawyer to decide what matters to the defense. So I think they're cutting it pretty close to that line with respect to Donald Trump's constitutional right to fully prepare. So you have one Democrat congressman who's saying the trial date is interfering with a fair democratic process, aka election interference, and you have a Democrat CNN lawyer basically agreeing with Trump's criminal defense attorney that the DOJ and Judge Chutkan are trying to railroad Donald Trump, sabotage his defense, and deny him his constitutional right to fully prepare for his court case. These people are despicable, man. And just the deep, divisive, partisan rot that exists in the current day of politics is so incredibly frustrating. The fact that Democrats are just going along with this stuff, even though they know it's a sham. The fact that they don't have the spine to stand up to these horrible abuses of the system and abuses of power because it helps their political ambitions, they're willing to abide by all of it. They're willing to turn a blind eye, and that's the most despicable part of all of it. They're willing to completely ignore the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, the Biden crime family, big tech being in their pocket. They're willing to ignore all of it, accept it as part of democracy in action, now rising all the way to the level of imprisoning their political opponents. And it seems like none of them have the basic decency to call it out like it is, to stand up against these abuses, to do the right thing, and stop this clear descent into leftist fascism. It's complete insanity. I guess what Ro Khanna said is a decent first step, but it certainly doesn't nearly go far enough. At least he admitted what we've been saying all along. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.